Okay, I just want to take a few minutes to go over some basic concepts with the sticks and the blades because this is very soon going to become a bigger part of the curriculum, which I will be putting out a great deal of information on in the future as far as drills, katas, and things like that you can start to teach students. And how we're going to break it down. Again, this is going to be techniques from Filipino-based martial arts, but they're going to be from the concepts and the movements of Kusaragi Jitsu. Okay, so it's not going to be a separate, okay, this is Kali or Eskrima. Okay, we're going to do the same kind of things as Kusaragi Jitsu, but we're just going to implement these weapons, the edged weapons and the impact weapons. Okay. Again, Kusaragi Jitsu already had some influence from this great Eskrima Serrada. A lot of the movements the same. Okay. There's a lot of empty hand that comes in with this too, because as you're going to see, as I talked about in the video with basic kata 1 and 2 and the information on the blocking, things don't necessarily change a lot when we bring in the weapons. Okay? So we're going to go over some basic stuff anyway, just some basic concepts, and again, all this stuff will be put out in time. Okay, so with the stick, one thing we need to keep in mind, this is an impact weapon. Okay, it is a stick. There are things that you can do with this that you cannot do with the blade. There are things that you cannot do with this that you can do with the blade. Okay, we need to make sure that we understand this. Okay, I see some really bad habits develop from the way that people will deal with a stick, such as the way that they grab it or hook it, snake it, as we call it, and then somebody has a blade, and hey. You would think they'd know better, but they tend to do the same thing and then realize that's a really bad idea. Okay, so we need to keep in mind a stick is a stick. Okay, or an impact weapon. The great thing about training on impact weapons is you can look around just about anywhere you're at and kind of find something that's like an impact weapon. It doesn't have to be this length. It doesn't have to be this material. Okay, the concepts still stay the same. And again, these are coming from Kusaragi Jitsu techniques to begin with. Okay, so. You have to kind of broaden your mind in your thinking on what is a weapon, which is most things. All right. So for a stick, one of the things that I see as a bad habit with sticks, that again, we don't want these bad habits. I can't stress this enough. These bad habits are not things that are going to go away on their own, and they are not tolerable at any level. We need to fix them. That is our job, to fix them. And again, if you feel like you're harping, good. That's what your job is. Okay. So with a stick, when we strike, we always start with the basic X pattern. Okay. Now there's a tight X, which is almost straight up and down. It's not a very degreed thing. Probably here and here. There's a little bit looser X, maybe to the temples. Right, but it's still high. You might get a more wide X to the collarbones. It might even get a little more wide, depending on what you're striking. Okay, but an X is it's a diagonal from the outside inside, and then from the from your hand inside outside. Okay, when I say inside or outside inside, I mean your hand is outside. It crosses your body inside, outside, or crosses your body inside. But that's what we usually start with, is just your basic X, okay? Now, this hand, until they learn what they're doing with it, just needs to be on their chest. We don't want it down here, okay? We want it up on their chest, because they need to, at the very least, learn to keep it up and not just hanging down here. Okay? So we don't ever want them building that habit of just letting their hand hang. If we're doing empty hand stuff, we don't want them down here, okay? So at least get them in the habit of keeping it up. The reason we're keeping it on their chest, say they don't accidentally put it out there because they don't know what to do with it yet and they get their fingers smacked. It's no good. Okay. So start with, move up. We start with the X. Okay? And that's how we have them practice. Here's where I see a problem usually. When they are swinging a stick, they need to be drawing a line with the center of their knuckles. Now this is where you have to imagine that the stick is in fact a blade, okay? And that it does have a cutting edge. Many times I'll put a tape down one side so they can kind of get it. Other times I'll give them a blunted machete or something so they can kind of get the feel of it. But the structure needs to be where they're cutting like that. Why? Well, because when you hit the wrong way with the stick, when it makes impact, when they start doing drills or hitting anything, remember what we learned from basic breaking grips or breaking grabs, okay? What are you doing when somebody grabs you? What are you going against? The thumb and the forefinger, right? Because that's the weak point. Well, same thing with the stick. If you're hitting like this and that hits something, it's coming out of your hand, okay? It's coming out of your hand. In fact, as you'll see later, that's exactly how we teach to disarm the stick. Same way we teach to disarm a grab, to break against the thumb, okay? So that's why it's extremely important. We don't want them dropping their stick. We definitely don't want a stick flying out across the room hitting somebody. All right, so they need to learn to cut with their knuckles when they hit. This is where they should be spending most of their time when they start with impact weapons, whether it's a stick, bat, I don't care what you give them, okay? Now, when they first start, make that motion wide and have them turn their hips into it. Later on, they can start to rotate up on the ball of the foot, which again, around the time we start slant 3, we're learning this, right? So this is where you start to implement that rotation. So at the beginning, get that structure nice and wide, and then start to teach the rotations of it, okay? And just work on that X. And again, like everything we do, do it on the other side as well, okay? But make sure that they are cutting that line. And again, when they go to a blade, right, they'll understand that that's why they have to have that same knuckle line there is the edge of the blade. And so if you start building that bad habit and you hit like this, well, you ain't doing, I mean, you're going to hit somebody, but you know, it's not going to do nothing, okay? So you can transition them into a blade. Now, when we get into a blade, one thing you're going to see the difference is shorter blades anyway, we're going to tighten that up, okay? Just like I talked about with basic katas and stuff, we start big and then we tighten everything up. Well, it's the same progression from the stick to longer blades to shorter blades. Everything starts to get a little bit tighter. Empty hand starts to get a little bit tighter, okay? So that becomes very important. When you get to the smaller blades, it's definitely going to be tighter, and it's going to be in and out quick, okay? Again, nothing's changed, right? If I come in and I do Way of the River, what's happening? The difference is instead of here, I'm cutting. Instead of just parrying, I'm cutting, okay? If I do a split, I'm parrying and cutting, okay? If I do my blocking out, I'm cutting, okay? That's the only difference, right? The hand motions that we're going to do are the same. Again, whether it be forehand grip or reverse hand grip, it's going to be the same motions, right? If I do Way of the River, now, instead of parrying, right, and then passing the arm, which, if you remember in some empty hand, we parry, we may pass the arm and then load up a hit, okay? But sometimes, if we're close enough, we get behind that elbow with that parry, what happens? This hand comes right under, and it hits automatically, right? Well, it's the same thing with blade. If I'm here, and it comes out and it's early enough, I'll stick that arm. But if I'm past, or if I close that gap and I'm behind the elbow, I'm just gonna stick them, okay? But the motion did not change. The angles that I can work with, the amounts of pressure I can work with, change. But another thing that we need to keep in mind when we start looking at weapons, especially something I see with the blades, just because you have a knife in your hand does not mean that you suddenly just start hitting like you just started yesterday, okay? Just tip-tapping with the blade. When you do a punch, that's how you stab, okay? If this is a 2-inch blade, I want to see it on the other side of their spine, okay? It doesn't mean you start just kind of doing tip-tap stuff. You still need to punch with the blade. That's your strikes, okay? So nothing changes. Obviously, we're going to get into specific techniques with those weapons, but again, they must have the fundamentals of Kushiwaki Jitsu, okay? Everything is intertwined, and every single detail makes a difference. All right, see you guys later.